In this video, you'll be learning how to complete the Excel assignment for CSIS 101. So here on my screen you can see I've just opened up the Excel program, and I'll go ahead and get started then by clicking on this blank workbook icon, and then I'll be following along from the example that I have for you in the instructions for the Excel assignment in the CSIS 101 class. So you can see when we open up an Excel workbook that it already has one worksheet created for us. If you come down to the bottom here, you'll see it's named tab 1. So I'm going to go ahead and rename that by right-clicking on the tab and then choosing the option rename. Type in income for my first worksheet. Press enter to accept the change. Now add a second worksheet, right click on it, rename it. That will be my expenses worksheet. And then we'll add one more, rename it, and that's going to be our profit and loss worksheet. So now I'll go back and make the income worksheet my active worksheet. We know it's the active worksheet because the tab turns green here. And then we'll go ahead and start creating the worksheet. So you can see that what Excel allows us to do is to create data in a tabular format. So in the old days we had to do this by hand. You'd actually go to a stationery store and you'd buy a ledger book, and it would have all the lines already drawn for you, and then you'd go in and you put labels at the top of each column, and usually you're tracking your income and expenses on a monthly basis, so you put all the month names as the headers in each column, and then fill it out on a monthly basis and add up the totals by hand at the end of the month. Or later on we've got calculators that help us a little bit with that. But this speeds things up quite a bit because we can store the data in this tabular format. We can use formulas to calculate the totals for us, and the nice thing about the electronic spreadsheet is that anytime you change the data within the cells, the formulas will automatically update the totals for you. So to get started on our income worksheet, I'm going to actually start in row 2 here and identify that this first column is going to be the income sources that I have. And then I'll press the tab key to move over to the next column, which is the B column. I'm still in row 2, notice. You'll also notice that because I typed in income sources and mistyped it, let's show you how to correct that. Go back to the cell where you typed it and just go up to the bar up here, the text bar, the input bar, and you can go ahead and just make any changes you need right there. Press enter to accept the change. But the point I was trying to make is that this is wider than the column A is. And so there's a nice little feature in Excel, which is I can take my mouse up to the line that separates column A from column B. Notice I get a new icon for my mouse there. It actually shows me that I can click and hold and drag that column wider if I'd like. Or a faster way to do that is just double click on that line, and you'll see that it automatically makes the column wider to accommodate the widest amount of text or data that's within that column. So once we have income sources, I want to go back now to row 2, but now into B column, and I'm going to type in abbreviation for January. I have my caps lock on there, so let's not do that. You can do it with caps and lowercase. I'm not going to mark you down for either method. And then I'll go into cell C2, so that's column C, row 2, and I'll type in February. So what I'm doing here is I'm getting a sequence of months going. Another cool thing about electronic spreadsheets is I can start a sequence, numeric, or in this case, the months of the year, create 2 values within the sequence, go back with my mouse, click on the first cell, it identifies the first value in the sequence, and then drag it to the right here to select the second value in my sequence. And now I get this handle in the lower right-hand corner of that selection area. That's called the fill handle. If I click and I hold on that handle, watch what happens as I drag to the right here. It's going to add March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December. And then I'll release my mouse. It types it all out for us. Although I notice it didn't put periods in there, so let's go ahead and just remove the periods from the first two, just for consistency's sake. Again, I wouldn't mark you down on something as minuscule as that. So now we have our header row, the first column identifying what the contents of that column will be, which will be my income sources. And then we have each of the months of the year here, so that they, again, are just identifying, reminding us, what data we'll be typing in that column. So as I get my sources listed here on the left, then I'll put in the values for each of those income sources for each of the months of the year. Now I like to have my months actually centered here, so I'm going to go back and just select the whole collection of month titles, month labels. I'm going to go up to the ribbon here. That's this bar that you see up at the top. You could call it a tool bar, which is how it originally was named, but once they got fancier with it, now they call it a ribbon. And you'll see I just collapsed that ribbon in case I want to get a little bit more space going there. So to get that back open again, I click on this button up here next to my name, and I'll have three choices: the auto hide ribbon, show tabs, and show tabs and commands. So I want to keep that ribbon open for the rest of this video, so I'll just click on that show tabs and commands option, and that just reopens it. If you want to collapse it, again, it's this arrow over here on the right. You can see it's Control F1 if you would like to use your shortcut keys. So on the ribbon bar, we have a lot of options. It's organized, grouped into different functionalities. So we've got the clipboard, we've got fonts, alignment, numbers, styles, cells, editing, analysis, sensitivity. And those options, those groupings actually will change depending on what we're doing in the spreadsheet from time to time. But for this particular example, what we're going to do is adjust the alignment of the text in each of the monthly columns here. So once I've selected the cells that I want to modify, you always got to select first before you can modify. Then I can go up to this alignment area, and you'll see that we have these icons that allow us to change the alignment. The first row is actually to align to the top, to the middle, and to the bottom. In this case, what we're going to do is we want to change what it currently is, which is aligned to the left, to align center. So I'll go ahead and click on that, and you can see now each of the months are aligned center within the column. Now that we have that done, we essentially know how wide our table then is going to be. And so that makes it so I can now come back and select in the first row all of the cells that make up the width of our table, so that I can put a title that will be centered above the actual data that will be typed into the spreadsheet. So once I have those cells selected, I can go back up to the ribbon, and we have this feature here, merge and center. So what that's going to do is it's going to actually combine all of those cells together, make it one cell. All the cells I have selected will become one cell, and whatever I type into that cell will be centered over the top of our table. So I'll go ahead and click on that option. You'll see now it is one cell, and so now we'll just go ahead and type in income, and then it's anticipating I want to type in income sources here, but I don't, so I'm just going to press delete, and then I'll just press enter to complete the entry. Notice too, once I pressed enter there, it took me down to the first cell in the next row, which is our income sources row, but we really want to go down one, so I can press enter there to move down, or at any time you can just move your mouse to the cell, click on it, and do some entry into that cell. So now looking at the example that we have in the CSIS 101 instructions for the Excel assignment, I see that we have employer, interest, and parental assistance as our income sources there. So I'll type in employer for the first one, press enter. That moves me down to the next row, but still in the first cell, the first column. Then we have interest. Press enter again, and then parental assistance. And again, you'll notice that that entry that I put in there is wider than that first, than the column is. And so again, I want to adjust it by going back up to the top where the split is between column A and column B, and just double click and have it auto fit then the value into the column. Now that we have the actual entries of our income sources, now we're going to type in some numeric values for each month in each income source. So in January, we're going to say that we earned $440 from our employer. Our interest income was $20, and our parental assistance was $100. Now you'll notice that we don't see the numbers formatted in dollar decimal format. So again, we're going to need to change the formatting within the cells here. And so I'm going to select actually all of the cells that I know will have the numeric values where I want them to show dollar values. And so I'm clicking on the first dollar value in January, and I'm going to click and drag my mouse all the way to the right to December, and then down to the parental assistance. Now at this point I actually realize I haven't made the table completely as wide as I would like it to be, because there needs to be a total column here on the right, and there will also be a total column down below that will add up the total for each of the individual months here. So I'm going to select that entire area because I'm going to go ahead and apply the formatting for all of those cells. And so once I have that area selected, so now I'll right click on one of the selected cells, any one is fine. I'll get a context menu, so then I can come down here and choose Format Cells. Click on that option, get a dialog box, and you'll see it's the Format Cells dialog box. The number tab being highlighted here. These are other options: alignment, font, border, fill, and protection that you can also manipulate for the cells. And we want to go ahead and choose currency here as the option. What you'll see that does for us is it puts a dollar sign under the heading sample here. It shows us we'll have a dollar sign, we'll have 2 decimal places, and we can change the number of decimal places, but 2 is appropriate. And also the symbol that we're using. If we were in England, for instance, we'd use a pound symbol instead of a dollar sign. But another advantage that it gives us here is you'll notice down below where it says negative numbers, it gives us a choice of what we want our negative numbers to look like. So you could just have them as a minus value printed in black, or we could have it show up without the minus value but be in red. So red would indicate that we have a negative value. And I'm going to choose that option. So I just click to select the option and then click OK. All the cells that were selected now will have that format applied to it. And you'll see immediately the values that we had previously typed in now adapt that new format, dollar sign, and 2 decimal places. So continuing on now, we're going to go ahead and type out all the values here for each of the individual income sources and each month of the year. I'm going to pause the video at this point so that you don't have to sit and watch me do all of this. But just know that as I type in these values, I'm going to change the numbers up. You don't want to have the exact same values in every column here. And again, we don't want you to give us your personal information. Just make all this stuff up. Okay, we're back, and you can see that I've typed out now all of the values for each of the months and for each of the income sources. And I've varied it a little bit from time to time. The parental assistance remained the same all the way through, but the income and the employer income and the interest have changed. So now we've got a few more things to finish up the data portion of the table here. First of all, I want to come up and select my header column. We've got some formatting that we need to do there. We're going to go ahead and bold that. So once I have the column selected that I want to change the formatting, I go up to the ribbon again, and this time I'll click on bold. And then also I want to change the foreground color, which is the A with the color bar underneath of it, to a color of green. Green being a color that we use to indicate income many times, red to indicate outflow of our cash. So green and bold is the formatting on that. Now also, out to the far right of our months here, what I forgot to do earlier is add the total column, because we want to be able to total up and see how much we're receiving for the year for each one of our income sources there. So I'll go ahead and press enter. And that now makes our table wider than it was initially. And I want to have my income header centered over all of that table, the entire width of that table. So all I have to do is just come back and reselect the cell that we originally merged together, and then select the new cell that was created here. Wasn't really created, but that we're now using in our table. And with those two selected, just go back up and choose that merge and center option 2 times. So click once to turn it off, and then click again to turn it back on, this time including that last column. Okay, so to get the totals, we want to use a formula here. It's really quite simple. You just click into the cell, press the equals key on your keyboard, type in the word sum, open parentheses, and then click and drag to select all of the cells that you want to be added together or summed. Once you have those cells selected, you can go ahead and press enter, and you'll see that the formula gets completed for you. It puts in the closing parentheses. So that's the formula that you use to quickly get totals, and they're dynamic totals at this point. So if we change any value in here, let's say we change this 500, so right now our total is 5,320 there. Let's say we change that column September's employee income from 500 to 600. As soon as I make that change, immediately you see that total is updated. Again, that's one of the very powerful abilities that we get from electronic spreadsheets. Accountants around the world were beating down the doors of the company that created the first spreadsheet, which was called VisiCalc, because they realized that it used to take them days to add up all the numbers that they had to total for all the different clients that they were working for. And you can see that immediately there, just with a simple formula, you were able to get the total. So now I'm going to show you something even cooler, because you might say, okay, well, I got to go type that formula here, and I got to type it here so I can get the results for those rows. But that's not correct. I mean, you could do it that way, but a quicker way to do it is select the cell that currently has the formula, and to take a look at the formula too. So again, sum is the function here, and then in the parentheses, we're identifying the actual cells by column and row number. So notice that we started in January, which is column B, and row 3 is the employer income. And then we ended in column M, row 3, which is December, and again the employer income. So we're saying select all the cells in between, so the colon between the starting cell and the ending cell is say select all in between, and then sum them, add them all together, and give us the total. Now all we have to do is copy that formula by selecting the cell that contains the formula. And again, we've got that autofill handle here. So I click and drag down 2 rows, and if you see, it gives us a total. But let's look behind the scenes here. I'll go ahead and click on the interest for the total column for interest, and then see how it moved now from B to M. That's going to be the same for all the months, right? But we're using row 4 now to actually total these values. So now it's B4 through M4. So Excel knew that we were copying that formula down by 1 row, and so it updated the formula for us as it copied and pasted the formula. So same thing down here. Now you'll see that again, B through M is the months, but we're in row 5 that we're collecting the values from. Now we want to also do that so that we can see the totals for our monthly income. So underneath of our income sources here, I'm just going to type the word total again. And this time I'll just press Tab to move my selection box over to the next column. And then again, I'm going to type in equals sum, parentheses, and this time I'm going to select these 3 cells, because those are the ones that I want added here to see what the total is for that particular month, for January in this case. And then go ahead and press enter. And let me just show you that, we used to have to type in the parentheses here, the closing parentheses, but the newer version of Excel actually anticipates that should have a closing parentheses. So we just press enter. Excel again automatically completes that for us. And again, it puts in the formula, but now what we're doing is we're going completely in the B column. But now we're going from B3 to B5 to get the values for that particular total. And as you might have anticipated, we also have a fill handle here now that we can click and drag all the way across to have that formula copied to each one of our columns, including that final total column here. So that indicates the actual total amount that we made of all three income sources for the year. Another formatting change to make here. We like to have our labels bolded, so I'm going to select each one of the cells that I want to have bolded there for the first row, or actually the second row under our income header. And then also in the income sources column, we want to have those bolded as well. Just a little bit from a visual standpoint, a little easier to read that now, to see that the individual income sources are separated from each of the values in each of the months. Looking at the example in the CSIS 101 instructions, I noticed too we had a formatting of the group of cells here underneath of our header. So we're going to select all of those cells, and I'll show you how to do that. For this particular feature, we need to go up here to the font grouping, and you're going to see that there's this cell box. And if you click on the down arrow, it gives you a lot of choices for what types of borders that you want to put on there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to initially put just a single border, a thin border, on all of the cells. So I'll just click all borders option, click away so you can see that now. And then one more little feature here, just to make it again visually a little bit clearer where those totals are down at the bottom. If we put a double line there, that usually indicates that we're separating the income sources from the totals. So I'm selecting only the cells then that are above that bottom row. Go back to that same borders box. This time though, I want to choose the bottom double border option. And you'll see that it just adds that now, in addition to the previous border that we had applied there. Do a Control S at this point. That's a shortcut for saving. And if you look at the instructions, the format that they're asking for here is our last name and then our first name, just so that when your instructor is downloading these spreadsheets, they can keep track of whose spreadsheet is whose. And then as far as location, I have a OneDrive. I'll go ahead and just save it to that OneDrive. So the reason I had you save it at that point is that we've always had this saying, save often stupid, SOS, save often stupid. And you learn what the stupid part is as soon as the power goes out one day when you're working on a complex spreadsheet and you've done all that work for hours and the power goes out and you lose everything. With that said, in the newer version of Excel, there is a feature here that actually becomes kind of a pain depending on certain situations, but it's called the autosave feature. And so that's automatically turned on when you create a new spreadsheet, a new workbook in the latest version of Excel. If you want to turn it off, you can. You just click on that button there and that'll say off now. So now I do have to do Control S. I have to make sure I save it on my own. So, you know, you can determine for yourself whether you want that on or not. I just run into some problems with it, especially in conjunction with my OneDrive from time to time, because I have to change my password so often that a lot of times I think it's saving, and because it's using an old password for my OneDrive, it actually isn't saving. Also, there is a button up here where you can save it quickly just by clicking on that button. You can see again it's showing the shortcut Control S, which is a standard shortcut in all the Microsoft Office products for saving a file. Okay, so our income spreadsheet's looking pretty good here. Let's go ahead now and add the graph that we want to have for the income spreadsheet. And the assignment doesn't really specify which graph that you use, so you can choose any graph that you want, but you want to make sure that the values that we're going to see in there. And so what we want to do is we want to select just the values that aren't the totals. So we're grabbing our labels here. So I clicked from income sources cell all the way over here to cell M5. Just clicked and dragged to select all those cells. Those are the cells now that I want to be displayed in the graph that we're going to, the chart that we're going to include here. To get that graph or chart, we're going to click on this Insert button up on the ribbon, and now you can see you get a choice of a lot of different options as far as your charts and graphs go. So for recommended charts, that's a good starting place. You can click on there, and it'll give you a bunch of options. And again, we don't really care specifically which format that you use here. Bar chart works really good in this particular example. We can use 2D columns and different versions of the 2D columns as well. So you can see you could have each item listed side by side or stacked. And I prefer the stacked column, so that's the option I'm going to choose. And I'm going to click under 2D columns then for stacked column. And you see it creates this chart down below for me. And I can move that chart by just clicking inside of it, holding down on my mouse button. As long as you get the icon, your mouse icon has the 4 arrowheads, that's the move icon. So you can just click and drag and move that around underneath. If you want to resize it, you can do that by grabbing one of these sizing handles here. Just click and drag. Now you'll notice that we don't have an actual title here that matches what we have up above. So what I want to do is select that title and then just go ahead and select the text that makes up that title and change it to the word income. Now in this case, if I press enter, it's not going to complete the change. It's actually, because it's in a text editor at this point, it thinks we want to move down a line and add another word. So I'll hit backspace to move back up and show you that if I just click outside of that text area, or outside of the graph completely, then the change takes effect that I typed in there. So if you look at what we've got, we have the individual months here listed from January to December, and then we have the legend that identifies which color represents which income source, and then there's different values on the left there. So that's the style that you want to have, in the sense that you want to be showing the months and the income sources as the legend, but no totals in there. So that completes our income worksheet. So let's go ahead and work on the expenses worksheet now. So I'll just come down to the tab that reads expenses and go to the expenses worksheet. We'll start in column A again, row 2, type in expenses, because row 1 is going to be our label. And for the expenses worksheet, just again going by the example that's in the instructions, we've got rent, car payment, utilities, cell phone, and groceries. Okay, now let's go ahead and add the months of the year. So January tab, February, grab those two and use the auto handle to finish it. December, and then this time we'll go ahead and remember to add our total column here first. In fact, we should have a total underneath of our last expense as well. And then we can add our label in that first row, select all of those cells that make up the columns from expenses all the way out here to total. Again, use that merge and center option, and then we'll type in there expenses. And then this time we'll format it as bold and give it a red heading. Okay, I'll go ahead and pause the video again as I type in all these numbers so you don't have to watch. Okay, I've started the video again so I can show you a little trick that'll help you quickly populate the values in all the columns here for all of your expenses. First thing, actually, I noticed that we got a little bit of a typo there, so I'm going to select that cell and correct it, and then also I need a gap, don't want gapped. And also just want to make sure we got a good width there, double click, give it that auto fit. So the trick I'm going to show you is just use the auto handle, select one cell with the value that's going to be repeated most within that row. Just drag it across, go ahead and fill the entire row with those values, and then just go back and make the individual changes that give a little bit of variety with regards to your costs. Again, I'm just going from the example that's in the instructions. Looks like those are the same until we get here. And then we got 80 and then tab 80. Press that. Okay, so we filled out all of the expense values. Let's go ahead and fix up the header here so that these are all centered. We go up and click on the Format Center button. We also want to make them bold, so I'll click on bold, and then also for the individual items, we want to make those bold as well. So now all we have to do is put the sum in here for each one of those rows and columns. So you should hopefully remember how to do that. Just press the equals symbol from the keyboard, type in sum, open parentheses, and then select the cells we want to sum. Press enter to complete the operation. Go back to where that formula is, and then we'll click and drag all the way down to here. And then we'll do the same for each column here. So equals sum. Select our cells. Press enter. And then get that repeated all the way across as well. Now you might notice last time I think I selected the formula from the column row and put it over here. This time I selected it from the row totals. It doesn't really matter, right? That's going to end up being the same no matter which formula that you use there. Now we also need to format our numeric values as currency, so I'm going to select all of those. We'll go ahead and right click, choose Format Cells, and then Currency. Change it to red for negative numbers, and click OK. Now we don't have any negative numbers here, but this will become more important once we get to our profit and loss worksheet. Then finally, we just want to go ahead and add the borders that we did before. So we're going to select the all borders option initially, and then just select this row here and add the double border to the bottom. Okay, so the table is complete. Now let's go ahead and create a graph and a chart here. So we'll select all of these values. Again, oops, don't want to get the totals. You do want to get the month headers, and you do want to get the expense labels. Now that we have that selected, we go up to Insert, choose our graph type. Again, we're using a stacked bar type here. So just like I did before, I'll select the 2D stacked column. And then I just need to change my chart title to read expenses. And remember, don't press enter there, just click outside of the table, of the chart I should say. Again, I'm going to do a Control S just to make sure I'm saving that file. Autosave is on, so really it's not necessary for me to do that. It's just an old habit, a good habit to get into if you're not working in an application that does autosave for you. So just really quickly, I want to look at the chart, see that we have the, again, legend down here. Each different color identifies a different expense source, and then they're all stacked up to show us what the totals are for each of our months. So now we need to move to our profit and loss worksheet. So I'm going to click on profit and loss here. And again, I'm going to start with the labels first. So we're going to use an abbreviation here, net P/L, net profit and loss. Go ahead and put in our months. I'll start the series and then click and drag until we get to December. I'm going to add the word total at the end. And now for the profit and loss, we're just going to have two different sources here for our values. So I'm going to shorten that to monthly MO income, and then MO monthly expenses. total PL, profit loss. Okay, so let's double click here to auto fit that column. Now for this worksheet, we want to not manually type in any values here. We want to use formulas to actually extract the data from our income and expense worksheets and have it show up here. So for January, our monthly income, when I press equals, I'll go to my income worksheet. So you'll see that we're at profit and loss, right? That's the active worksheet. I've typed in equals under January for monthly income. So now I want to click on the income tab so that I can go back to the actual total for my income in January. So that's this value right here. Click on that cell, press enter. It takes you back to the profit and loss cell, and you see it has indeed copied that, but it didn't copy the number. It created a formula. You can see it's equal to income exclamation point B6. So that says go to the income worksheet and then grab that value from cell B6. Guess what? We can autofill all of that now. You can see as I go through here, it's going to change the value of the column that it's pulling it from, but it's always from the income worksheet and that first, or the total row of the income worksheet. Let's do the same now for expenses. Equals, click on the expenses worksheet tab, go to the total for January, click on it, press enter. We return back to the profit and loss worksheet. Again, there's the formula. This time the expenses worksheet, cell B8 had the total in it. Let's autofill that. So we grabbed all those values. Now we have to create our formulas in here. So we'll do equals sum. Select the row of cells here. Press enter. Go ahead and autofill down with that. And just while I'm thinking about it, let's go ahead and select all of our data cells here. Format them as currency. Choosing red for our negative values. Now for our monthly totals, we'll need to change it up a little bit because we want to show the income minus the expenses for our monthly total. So we'll start it out the same with the equal sign, but then I'll select the income cell, press the minus symbol, and then click on the expenses cell and press enter. Go ahead and autofill that across, and you can see that we had a few months there where we actually spent more money than we earned, and it's very easy to see that because they're all identified with red text. So to finish up our formatting, let's go ahead and add our header here of net profit and loss. We need to bold our labels and our borders. Okay, so that completes the formatting. Now all we have to do is insert our chart. For our chart now, we're going to want to include the monthly totals. So not the categorical totals, but the monthly totals. Oops, we still need to center our months here. So we'll select the months and center them. Now we can go ahead and add our chart. So we'll go, we need to select first, as I say, we're going to add or include the monthly totals in this chart. So we're including them in our selection area here before we go and actually insert the chart. Click on the insert option here in the menu bar, and this time let's go ahead and choose a 2D line chart just to switch things up a bit and modify our title to be profit and loss. And there we have it. I guess we could resize this maybe a little bit, make it a little easier to see. And so there we have it. Just make sure everything has been saved, and then you need to go ahead and grab that Excel file, which again is named your last name, first name .xlsx. So wherever you save that at, you'll need to now copy and paste that into Canvas to be able to get credit for this assignment.